Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. However this finds you, I do hope this finds you well. Listen, I'm not going to be on here for a long time, but I'm on here for an exposing theater type of time. That is because I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about. I have been watching this happen in real time, and I have not heard anybody clearly call it out. AI governance has become a market. In the last year, the number of vendors selling AI ethics scoring tools, governance platforms, responsible AI certifications, and trustworthy AI audits has multiplied to a degree the field has not seen before. The websites are clean, the branding is sharp, the language is sophisticated. Words like sovereignty and alignment and ancestral and ethics are being deployed at a pace that should make all of us pay attention. Underneath a substantial portion of this market activity, though, is very little substance and very little governance happening. I have spent so much time inside of institutions where decisions about technology, audience data, and community are being made at scale. I've built digital engagement infrastructure for one of the largest public housing authorities in the country, reaching over 600,000 residents, and directed marketing and strategic partnership strategy during humanitarian crisis response that served hundreds of thousands of people across many countries. I've led AI governance, marketing, and brand work inside some of the largest institutions in the United States, authoring frameworks that have determined how a team of senior practitioners use these tools when they are building communications that will reach individuals navigating institutional systems for the very first time. I'm telling you all of this not to recite a resume, but to tell you what I'm about to share with you comes from inside the rooms, not from outside of them. And what I've come to understand in the middle of all this, sitting inside these rooms and watching this market form, is that this field needs a simple and durable way to tell the difference between AI governance and AI governance light or theater. There are 3 questions, and I want to walk you through them. The first question is whether the governance work happens before deployment or after. Governance theater operates downstream of the AI system. It scores the output once the AI is already running. It evaluates whether the responses align with stated values. It produces audit reports and certifications and dashboards, and what those products are essentially doing is performing a quality assurance check on a deployment that has already happened, in a language that has been borrowed from the ethics field. The communities affected by the deployment are already impacted by that time. Real governance, by contrast, operates upstream of the system. It asks who made the decision to deploy this tool in the first place, who was in the room when that decision was made, who was not in the room, and what would have to happen next. If a governance approach can only score systems that are already running, what it is doing is auditing. It is not governing. Both of those functions can exist within an institution or organization, but they should never be confused or conflated with each other, because an audit cannot stop deployment, and governance can. The second question is whether the framework surfaces power or whether it obscures power. Governance theater is heavy on values language, and the values language is almost always universal and uncontroversial. Ethics, principles, alignment, trust, responsibility, accountability. The words are doing a lot of work, and what the words are doing is making it harder to ask the question that actually matters, which is who holds the authority here? Who holds the authority to make binding decisions about the AI system? Real governance is explicit about decision rights. It names who has the authority to deploy, to pause, and to decommission the tool. What evidence counts as a reason to stop? Who decides what evidence counts? Whether the affected community has any standing in that process, and what the standing actually permits them to do when they exercise it. Here's a test that you can run. Read a governance framework, audit tool, or platform's marketing copy carefully. Then ask yourself whether you can tell from what is published who actually holds the power to stop the system from operating. If you cannot answer that question after reading their materials, what the framework is doing is obscuring power, not surfacing it. And the obscuring is intentional because the people selling these products know that naming where the power lies would make the product harder to sell. The third question, and this is one that separates everything, is whether affected communities can actually enforce a no. Almost every AI governance framework currently describes some version of participation, consultation, stakeholder engagement, or community input as part of the approach. The language sounds correct. Very few frameworks, when you read them carefully, give affected communities the authority to stop the deployment. Participation is performed, the input is gathered, taken into consideration, weighed, and then set aside as the institution moves forward with whatever it was going to do in the first place. The decision making stays exactly where it always was, and the affected community walks away from that process believing that they were heard when what actually happened is they were managed. That's the gap I've been working on for years. It's what I call the translation layer, the governance infrastructure that enables communities most impacted by AI systems to exercise actual decision-making authority over the development, evaluation, deployment, and nurturing of said systems. The translation layer distinguishes between participation and power because existing AI governance frameworks frequently conflate the two, and they call that progress. These components define the translation layer in operational terms. The first is participation infrastructure, which means standing bodies with reserved authority for affected communities. And I want to be precise here because participation infrastructure is not advisory panels or consultation processes or town halls. The second is evidence redefinition, which means treating the testimony, observation, and analytical work of the affected communities as expertise rather than anecdotal, and weighing that expertise accordingly when deployment decisions are being weighed. And the third is enforcement authority, which means real power over evaluation metrics, equity, constraints, and timing and conditions of deployment, including the authority to pause or decommission the tools after they are running. Without these components, y'all, operating together, the translation layer does not exist, and the governance approach you are looking at is theater. Here's what I want you to take from this. Mission-driven organizations, philanthropies, civic institutions, regulators, and policymakers are making decisions right now about which AI governance approaches to adopt for their organizations. And the choices that they make are consequential. The wrong choice does not just waste budget. The wrong choice puts affected communities in the position of being governed by a system that claims to protect them, and it doesn't. The risk in the current moment is not that AI governance will fail loudly. The risk is that AI governance will succeed rhetorically while failing structurally. And the language of ethics will become a marketing layer instead of an accountability layer. You don't need a technical background to run the 3 questions. You don't need a law degree or access to anybody's proprietary engine, and you don't need to take any vendor's word for it. What you need is the discipline to look past the language and ask in concrete and crystal clear terms who decides on whose terms and with what enforcement. Real AI governance is harder and it's slower and significantly less sexy than the market is currently selling. It requires institutions to give up power that they currently hold, and it requires affected communities to have real authority rather than symbolic representation. It requires the willingness to be told no by people who have historically been talked over. That is the work. Everything else is theater. Well, I told you I would not be on here for a long time, but for an exposing theater type of time. And I delivered. As always, share this with someone who could use a little bit of deep thinking today. Like and subscribe. And remember, until next time, you are capable of big things.